Right, I was supposed to do an intro on the Risala. Guys, shall we do a quick intro on the Risala? What time did I begin? I began at, let me just check. Oh, right, I've got a bit of time. Let's do a quick intro on the Risala. Right, I had said I was going to speak about Ibn Abi Zayd Al-Qayrawani, who is a legend in Maliki fiqh. He he passes away in 386 Hijri. We're talking over 1,000 years ago, people. So this is the kind of person I'm speaking about. He was born in 310 Hijri. So we're talking, like about, there he is, a couple of centuries after Imam Malik. In that sense, he's still very early. As in he's in the time that a lot of the great scholars of hadith and so on have just passed away, or people around that era are just living on or just passing away. That's the kind of era he's born into. Okay, he's from Tunis, modern day Tunisia. He's that's where he's buried as well, in a place Qayrawan. This is associated with his name. And this, for those of you that understand Urdu or Farsi, comes from the word caravan, like a caravan, because where you had a bunch of settlers, they actually went there as a kind of like a caravan, as a kind of like a mobile settlement, and it became known as Qayrawan. And from there you have his name, which is Ibn Abi Zayd, or his actual name is Abdullah. He goes by the kunya Abu Muhammad, and he's known as Ibn Abi Zayd Al-Qayrawani. Now, I thought I'd shed a bit of light on him. He has a very famous text in Maliki fiqh called the Risala, which is just a treatise, just like a work. It's like saying, a writing almost, a treatise on Maliki fiqh. It's seen as at a kind of like a borderline beginners, fundamental, or maybe borderline intermediate, but not even that really. A beginner's text, a lot of the time it's seen as, if not maybe an intermediate level, but it's something studied early on. But I wanted to just say a few words on that. But before getting to that, let me just tell you a bit about this guy. He is one of the dons of the Maliki madhab. Okay, he is referred to as young Malik al-Saghir. He is the encyclopedia, one of the early encyclopedias of the madhab. He is referred to categorically as the sheikh within the madhab. So if they say, quite often they will say, in fact there's a saying that Lola Shaykhan, if it wasn't for the two sheikhs, wa Muhammadan, and the two Muhammads, wal Qadiyan, and the two Qadis, then this madhab would have gone. La dhahab al madhab. And the Shaykhan were, you've got Ibn Abi Zayd. He is really, when you say a sheikh, you're referring to Ibn Abi Zayd. Okay, that's his kind of maqam within the madhab. Okay, now he's a contemporary. Let me just bring some popular names to your attention of Abu al-Hasan al-Qabisi, an absolute legend within the madhab as well. All right. Now, also the other Sheikh, Abu al-Hasan al-Qabisi, so when they say Shaykhan, they're referring to al-Qabisi as well. They were contemporaries, and there was arguably some kind of rivalry. And I want to speak about the character of Ibn Abi Zayd just briefly, that he was somebody who always emphasized on the art of giving. And he was very wealthy as a person. Allah had blessed him with great wealth. And to the extent that when he heard of other scholars, so there's a famous scholar, Qadi Abdul Wahhab al-Baghdadi, who's from Iraq, who was struggling financially, that he sent thousands of dinars to him, just to kind of, as a kind of like a sponsorship, just to kind of support him. And he was somebody, if he heard that something was going on, he would support him. His own contemporary, Abu al-Hasan al-Qabisi, who at some point I feel that they may have even had a fallout. When Abu al-Hasan al-Qabisi's daughter was married, Ibn Abi Zayd took upon himself the entire funding for her marriage, just as an act of kind of just, kind of like brotherhood towards Abu al-Hasan al-Qabisi. And he says to him that, he says that I had for considerable years actually put aside a certain amount of money for her. And this is how scholarship ought to be, and this is how humanity ought to be, that despite, even if there's rivalry, even if there's challenges, even if there's, sometimes you may get on with people, sometimes you may not, yet look at the level of humanity. And later in life, in his final stages, when Ibn Abi Zayd actually passes away, Abu Hassan al-Qabisi is the one who actually prays his janazah, leads his janazah. I mean, it's just an interesting fact. I thought it's worth sharing. From amongst his teachers, Ibn Abi Zayd's teachers, was Abu Bakr ibn al-Labbad, the famous Maliki who wrote a refutation of Imam Shafi'i. It's called a Rad al-Shafi'i. Those of you that, I believe, Dr. Sherman Jackson has translated it into English. Was amongst his teachers also Abu al-Arab at-Tamimi and Abu Sa'id ibn al-Arabi, and also Ibrahim ibn al-Munthir, the son of the famous Ibn al-Munthir, were amongst his teachers as well. And his students, his two sons, Abu Bakr and Umar, Baradha'i, the famous Maliki who... Sorry, I thought... Right, the famous Maliki who does who compresses the Mudawwana as well, Tahdhib, who writes the Tahdhib, Makki ibn Abi Talib, the famous Qari, the reciter, and Abu Mutarrif al-Qanaza'i, the famous Muhaddith. I do have a work of his as well somewhere over here. Right, now I wanted to just highlight the Risala. Now, this is a copy of the Risala. This is by Dar al-Gharb al-Islami. I've had this for several years. I have actually, by the way, taught the Risala, and I will be airing some of the recordings for it as well, inshallah, on Facebook and YouTube coming soon. But this is a kind of a brief text that he writes at the request of certain people. Now, then we're not too sure who. He writes in the beginning that I've been asked by someone. Most likely it was somebody called Muhraz ibn Khalaf as-Sudafi. Some people have said it may have been Abu Ishaq as-Sibai. For those of you who are familiar with these people, they're contemporaries. But he writes it, and he says that this is, this is something I write, a brief, a few words, a few sentences. He kind of expresses it like that. So it may be helpful for people. Okay. Now, I just wanted to bring our attention to this book. This book later on in time was actually during a period of time written in gold, people. Wow. To that extent that, this Risala of Ibn Abi Zayd Al-Qayrawani, people. Allah, Allah, Allah. But he begins it by saying these words, A'anana Allahu wa iyyak ala ri'ayati wada'i'ih. That may Allah help us all on safeguarding what he's entrusted us with. And he mentions that وَحَفِظَ مَا عَوْدَعَنَا مِنْ شَرَائِعِهِ, and may he allow us to safeguard and protect this sharia. فَإِنَّكَ سَأَلْتَنِي, so you have asked me, أن أكتب لك جملة مختصرة, that I write for you a brief sentence من واجب أمور الديانة, from that which is necessary in the matters of this theme. And when he says you have asked me, that is most likely, as I mentioned, Muhraz as-Sudafi. Okay. Now, this Risala, I just wanted to mention that it has been, Abu Zayd al-Dabbagh did mention that people was so competitive in obtaining it that at one point it was written in golden ink. Okay, so wow, so it's kind of an accolade for it. And people have said that it is, if somebody has studied this book, والحاصل أن العلم بكتاب الرسالة المعبر عنها بالجملة المختصرة والعمل بما فيها يحصل للعامل غاية الشرف والسيادة في الدنيا والسعادة في الآخرة. That if somebody had actually studied this book and understood it, that suffices them for this dunya. In terms of knowledge, that's how it's been described, which is amazing. So I just thought I'll highlight that, and then I'll highlight that what are some of the commentaries, just briefly, that have been written on this? One of the early commentaries is Maslakul Jalala, which was written by Abu Bakr al-Abhari, one of the Iraqi Malikis, a great usuli. What he'd actually done was done the takhrij of the ahadith on it. Sheikh Ahmad Zarruq highlights that. Another two commentaries were done by Abdul Wahhab al-Baghdadi, the one who Ibn Abi Zayd actually supported financially himself as well. Now, and one of those commentaries I actually have right here. This is Ibn Abi Zayd, that's Abdul Wahhab al-Baghdadi's. Somebody, Suhaib Azam, has asked, can I buy this book in English? I believe the Risala has been translated in English. You can buy it and you can start studying Maliki fiqh, even if you are Hanafi. Yes, that's correct. I do have a few Maliki fiqh works on YouTube. I have the Ashmawiyya in 6 lectures. I have Qadi Iyad's Foundations of Islam in 20 lectures. And I do have the Risala detailed commentary, which I'll be airing soon as well. Now, so you've got also Ibn al-Arabi, the famous Maliki legend, also had a Sharh Gharib al-Risala, believe it or not, where he went through some of the difficult words. That's the Maliki legend from Al-Andalus. Now, there was an interesting book, which I wish I could get hold of, by the famous theologian Muhammad al-Sakuni, where he did a book, Al-Jama' Bayn al-Risala wa al-Talqin wa al-Tafri'. These are amazing works. Talqin is by Abdul Wahhab al-Baghdadi, and Tafri' is by Ibn al-Jallab, once again one of the Baghdadi scholars. So you've got, other than that, there's Al-Mufid ala Risala li Talib al-Mustafid, which or Raghib al-Mustazid, which is by Yusuf al-Rajraji, who was from the 8th century. That's not the Rajraji who has a work on the Mudawwana. That's a different Rajraji. You have At-Tahrir wa Tahbir, which is by Abu Hafs al-Fakahani, who passes away 734 Hijri, who lived in Egypt. He was a great Maliki. I do have some of his works over here. That's the same famous Fakahani, okay, and that was in 4 volumes. You have Abu Zayd Al-Jazuli has 3 kind of compositions on the Risala that were done. You have Abu Zayd Al-Tasuli's, Yusuf ibn Umar Al-Anfasi has a taqeed, a popular taqeed, which is in the British Museum. Now, you have Hulul al-Maqala, Sharh al-Risala, li Abu Imran Musa al-Zannati, who passes away in 802 Hijri. That's the famous Abu Imran al-Zannati, whose opinion I've quoted previously, that where he speaks about alcohol in cooking. He says that because alcohol evaporates, that it is permissible to use that in cooking. That's Az-Zannati, the famous Maliki scholar, who passes away in the 9th century, so 500 years ago. He has a commentary, had a commentary on the Risala. Obviously, most of these are not in print, unfortunately. You have Qalshani al-Tunisi's Tahrir al-Maqala fi Sharh al-Risala, which had recently come into print, and I, right, if I can grab it right here. Nope, that's not it. Right, there it is, people. Alright, Tahrir al-Maqala by Qalshani. Right, now, you do have Murshid al-Mubtadi'een lil Jazuli, which that's in print as well. There it is. You can actually purchase that. These came out recently in the last few years. Other than that, a lot of people have worked on the Aqidah section as well, like those of you that are familiar with Abu Abbas Hululu, who is a student of Burzuli, the one I quote when we say that the punishments in Islam change. And I've quoted Abu al-Qasim al-Burzuli before. Is very famous, and he changed the punishments, the cutting of the hand or the stoning or whatever people want to say, into financial penalties. And he said that's what the Sharia mandates, and he was a legend in Maliki fiqh. His famous student Abu Abbas Hululu, he also has a commentary on the Aqidah section of the Risala. Then you've got its Nadha'ir, which is where you take parallel issues and put them together in fiqh, and the famous one by Ibn Ghazi al-Maknasi. You've got some of the Risala commentary by Abu Abbas al-Zaqaq. You've got Al-Fath al-Rabbani upon the Aqidah by Manufi. Manufi has almost, you know, this Abul Hasan al-Manufi, the Egyptian scholar who passes away in 939 Hijri. He has almost 8 separate works on the Risala. 8 works, wow. So he has one, Tahqiq al-Mabani wa Tahrir al-Ma'ani, on the Risala. He has Tanwir al-Maqala. Sorry, that's Tatai's. But and it's interesting, Tatai's this one, he has he did a commentary on the Risala, and Qarafi says about it that سمعت بعض أشياخ يقول إنه أخذ ما تعب فيه الشيخ أبو الحسن علي الشاذلي. So Qarafi says, I've heard people say that Abu al-Hasan Ali al-Shadhili really endured to kind of do, this is where Tatai has taken most of his works from. And at Timbukti, kind of the scholar from Timbuktu, he refutes him by saying ما قاله بعض شيوخه غير مسلم بل من وضع شرحه على خليل وغيره لا يصعب عليه وضع شرح على الرسالة. He says that these guys, what are they on about? Anybody who can do a work on Khalil and these books, why can't he do a work on, why has he taken it from he goes that this is إنما هو التحامل وعصبية اللهم غفرا. Right, so that was an interesting, just a little anecdote. Hattab, those of you that are familiar with Hattab, he has Tahrir al-Maqala. I do have it somewhere. It's a commentary on the Nadha'ir of Risala by Ibn Ghazi al-Miknasi, which I quoted earlier on. Let's skip a few here. You've got also Hattab's son Yahya has a commentary on the Hawashi of Hattab. His son Yahya has that. You've got Hashia upon the Tatai by Ali al-Ajhuri, Nuruddin. Now, Ajhuri has a few commentaries. I believe they are maybe 3 or slightly more upon the Risala, or works upon the Risala. You've got Sheikh Mayyara, who has one, Abu Muhammad al-Zarqani. You got Fawaki al-Dawani, which is a popular one. I do have that here somewhere. This, by the way, is an awesome one that I've relied upon quite a bit, by Ibn Naji, an amazing scholar, really, honestly. I really loved his, Qasim Ibn Naji, his commentary. You've got also, those of you, I don't quote this, Sheikh Ahmad Zarruq's commentary on the Risala. They're very similar, but I actually prefer Ibn Naji's. It's I just loved it, the way he goes into a lot of khilaf and things like that. You do have a Sharh al-Saghir by Al-Kharshi, Abu Abdullah Al-Kharshi, but once again, it's not in print really. We do have this is by the Fawaki al-Duwani by Nafrawi. That's good, it's good, one of the Al-Azhari kind of scholars, but I do actually prefer Ibn Naji's, if I'm to be honest. Right, okay, moving on, skipping some of these. You do have some of the Adawis and the Mauritanians. Right, you coming right up to Sidi Ahmed al-Ghamari. Sidi Ahmed al-Ghamari had a book called Takhrij al-Dalail lima fi al-Risala min al-Furu'i wal-Masail, but it became so carried away in bringing all the hadith that he stopped at Kitab al-Nikah, and then he kind of did a summary in his book called Masalik al-Dalala, which is in print, which I do also have. I do refer to that as well in the actual commentary that I do. Right, so yeah, so I mean, so quite a lot of people have done commentaries on the Risalah of Ibn Abi Zayd Al-Qayrawani. He is an absolute legend, really. You can't, and a don within the madhab. He was the first person to do a summary of the Mudawwana. This is the ikhtisar of the Mudawwana, and it's in print now. It's in 3 volumes. He also has An-Nawadir wa Ziyadat, which is an encyclopedia where he collects all the opinions of Imam Malik that are not in the Mudawwana. So he says, An-Nawadir wa Ziyadat ala ma fil Mudawwana min ghayriha min al-Ummahat. So the mother texts. I'm not. Somebody referred to them as the something texts. If I say it, badnaam ho jaunga. Tawbah, tawbah. But the mother texts, right? So That's Ibn Abi Zayd Al-Qayrawani, and he has a book, Adhab عن مذهب Imam Malik, in defense of the madhab of Imam Malik. I thought I'd give a summary introduction to Ibn Abi Zayd, who's known as Young Malik. He was also the person who, in his lifetime, he had kept dogs, and it's an interesting thing about him that he was asked that how can you keep dogs, and you know, there's these hadith and that say it's haram to keep a dog or something, and he said, if the companions were alive in our day and age, they they would have kept lions, let alone dogs. So that was Ibn Abi Zayd, and one of the things that he suffered, actually, talk about, you know, he was a person of great character and great he helped a lot of people, but he actually took a lot of abuse from his wife. Believe it or not, it's actually popularly transmitted that his wife would give him quite a hard time. Yeah, tova, 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 huh? So his wife would give him a real hard time, actually. She would abuse him quite a bit. I don't know whether she would physically abuse him, but this also goes to show that, you know, there's this view sometimes that men in the past, they always kind of like, you know, they roughed up women, or they always kind of, it was very patriarchal, or they were very... It's not always true, because here you have a great Imam, Ibn Abi Zayd, Abu Muhammad al-Shaykh Al-Qayrawani, who is a legend in his time, and yet openly in front of people as well, his wife would abuse him sometimes. She would verbally abuse him. Yaar, izzat hi nahi rahi, yaar. He's like this big legend, and at the same time, she'll just come out and be like, yo, you... And you know, they asked Imam Ibn Abi Zayd that, why don't you just divorce her? They said, yaar ye ko... They said, koi kissa khatam karo, yaar. You know, why don't you just divorce her? So he said, look, this was his, I'm not saying it has to be this way, but he said that, look, you know, Allah's given me all these other things, and he said, look, maybe, and because he was wealthy as well and things like this, he said that, sorry, has the sound become, is the sound distorted? Somebody said something about the sound. Audio. Right, so the audio has become distorted. That's it? Okay, let me just, voice is rattling, okay. If the voice rattles, let me know, people. I'm gonna have to look into why this actually is doing this, because it only did it as a before. And it only did it as a one-off before. Okay, has that fixed it? Is that better? Right, okay, yes. Yeah. So, I mean, this was the thing. So Ibn Abi Zayd was asked how come he doesn't just divorce his wife, and he said, well, look, he said maybe, he said maybe this is just another test from God for me. But he actually read the verse of the Quran where he said, Asa an takrahu shay'an wa huwa khayrun lakum. That perhaps you dislike something, and yet it is very good for you. So he said that, look, I'm just gonna hold on. Right, so right, is it messed up again? It's messed up again. Right. Oh, damn, I don't get what's going on, man. You know what? I'm going to set up for next week. I will set up an independent mic. So un momento, people. I have to go into the properties and redo this. Alright, so now I hope it's fixed something. You know what? There's a... Right, okay. For next week, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up... I've actually bought a mic. It's my fault, actually. I thought that, you know what, I didn't bother setting it up. I'm just using the mic that's on the webcam, but I'm going to change that from next week. So my apologies, people. So yes, anyway, so that was the kind of brief story of Ibn Abi Zayd. He is still, they do have a kind of a very humble kind of mausoleum kind of thing for him in Tunis. So if any of you are visiting, you can always check it out. Cool. Somebody said Mufti upgrade. I will do. I've already got it right here, but I have not bothered setting it up. It comes with the whole sound condenser and everything, but it's my bad. Let's move on.